Underestimation sits quietly at the start of so many stories, but here it comes with an edge you can almost feel. It begins with the way people look at her, or rather the way they look past her. She enters the room without fanfare, without swagger, without any signal that she carries a lifetime of training beneath her calm surface. The space is loud with confidence from other people. They talk big. They stretch like they are warming up for greatness. They laugh in the way people laugh when they believe the place belongs to them. She takes it all in with an expression that neither invites nor rejects. She simply observes. And because she does not rush to prove herself, the room decides something about her before she says a word. It always happens fast. A glance, a whisper, a shrug. People are quick to sort others into boxes because it makes their world easier to understand. She ends up in the box of someone harmless, someone out of her depth, someone who will not challenge the balance of things. They see her size, her quiet, the softness of her steps, and they mistake all of it for weakness. It never crosses their minds that restraint can be a choice. It never occurs to them that the person who speaks the least may see the most. She knows all this without needing to hear the comments. She has lived it long enough to recognize the rhythm. The gym itself adds to the illusion. It is the kind of place that rewards loud energy. People hit pads with force meant to be noticed. They strike in ways that echo off the walls. Every impact sounds like a declaration. The regulars thrive on that sound. They want to be heard. She enters quietly, which makes her nearly invisible to them. They assume she is new. They assume she is unsure. They assume she is the type who will try something for a week, get scared, and move on. They do not ask her anything because they believe they already know everything. What they cannot see is the history carried in her stillness. They do not see the mornings that started before sunrise, the cold water dives, the controlled breathing under pressure, the years of mastering her reactions. Training like hers strips away ego, not strength. It teaches precision, not noise. She has learned how to make her presence small when she wants it small, and how to make it unmistakable when she chooses. She stands in that gym with the posture of someone aware of her surroundings, aware of her center, and aware of the difference between acting strong and being strong. But underestimation is powerful because it creates a false sense of safety in the ones doing it. They relax their awareness. They let their guard down. They think they can push boundaries without consequence. They believe she is someone who will accept whatever they give her. That belief opens the door for what comes next. It affects the way they move around her, the way they speak near her, and eventually the way they decide to test her. They mistake her silence for uncertainty instead of seeing it as intention. They view her measured movements as hesitation instead of discipline. They project their assumptions onto her because it fits the story they want to tell themselves. There is also something almost predictable in the way the group behavior forms. One person dismisses her. Another follows. Soon it becomes a shared conclusion. No one pauses to question it, because questioning requires humility. It requires imagining that they could be wrong, and that is something pride rarely allows. So they settle into their misjudgment with ease. They even enjoy it. It gives them permission to be careless around her, to overlook her, to underestimate her without restraint. They do not see the danger in doing so. What stands out is her lack of reaction. She does not bristle. She does not correct anyone. She does not step forward to prove a point. She has learned that people reveal themselves without help. She lets them be as loud or careless or arrogant as they want. She waits, not because she is unsure, but because she knows exactly who she is. She has no need to announce anything. She has faced situations that demanded absolute clarity, absolute control, and absolute presence. A room full of strangers making bad assumptions is nothing compared to that. Their underestimation becomes the stage they build for themselves. Every small act of dismissal becomes part of the setup. Every careless comment becomes part of the atmosphere. They are writing the scene without realizing it. And she stands there, steady and patient, knowing that people often learn the truth only after they push too far. The moment he knocked her into the wall did not come with a warning. It happened the way careless things often happen. A mix of ego, momentum, and the assumption that she would move out of his way. She had seen him earlier, pacing with the rest of the group, throwing punches into the air with the confidence of someone who believed strength came from loud impact. He looked at her the same way the others did, with a casual dismissal that said everything without saying anything. But where others kept their distance, he felt the need to act on his belief. It was not enough for him to assume she did not belong. He needed to show it. They were shifting through drills, a loosely guided flow where everyone moved around the mat. She kept her space tight, controlled, aware of every step. He expanded his space like he owned the floor. He kept inching closer, testing reactions, as if trying to see how much room he could take from her without resistance. She did not respond, because she did not respond to provocation that served no purpose. He saw that as a green light. People who want to prove themselves often mistake patience for weakness. He wanted to feel bigger than someone. She happened to be the easiest target in his eyes. The hit came during a transition. Someone called for a switch in partners, a shuffle in positions, and bodies moved in different directions at once. He did not have to collide with her. He chose the angle that would put him directly in her path. His shoulder drove forward faster than necessary, harder than required. It was a move designed to unsettle, to show dominance, to send a message. He leaned into it with the weight of someone who believed he could do it without consequence. The contact was sharp, direct, and meant to leave an impression. She felt the impact, the sudden transfer of force that pushed her backward. Her body met the wall with a solid thud that echoed through the room. It was not loud enough to stop everyone, but it was loud enough for him and the nearest group to hear. For a split second, he expected her to stumble. He expected her to lose balance or show discomfort or at least look shaken. That was the reaction he knew. That was the reaction he depended on to feel powerful. Instead, the moment stretched into something different. She steadied herself as if the wall were simply another surface to align against. Her stance adjusted with calm precision. Her breathing did not change. Her eyes stayed clear. The impact that was meant to rattle her barely disrupted her posture. She had been hit harder under conditions far more dangerous than a crowded gym. His force felt like a nudge compared to what she was trained to endure. He caught the look in her eyes as she straightened. It was not anger. It was not surprise. It was recognition. The kind of recognition that comes from someone who has seen the same move in countless forms, from people who act on impulse rather than discipline. She understood him before he understood her. She read his intention, his ego, the insecurity hidden under his bravado. She had seen the pattern many times in many places, always ending the same way. The difference was that he had no idea what stood in front of him. The room shifted in small ways. One person paused mid-stretch. Another glanced over, sensing tension but not understanding its source. The man who hit her rolled his shoulders, trying to make the moment look accidental, but there was a thread of doubt in his expression now. The kind of doubt that appears when reality does not match expectation. He waited for her to react so he could decide how to respond. She gave him nothing. No flinch, no protest, no hint of being affected. Silence can be louder than confrontation. Her lack of reaction made the collision feel heavier for him than for her. He had expected movement, maybe even an apology from her. Instead, he was the one who felt slightly off balance. The move that was meant to put her in her place ended up revealing something about him. His need to strike first, his desire to impress the people watching, his habit of using force to define his worth. All of it became clearer in the stillness that followed. She stepped away from the wall with the same measured presence she had carried since she walked in. She adjusted nothing except her center. There was no sign of injury, no sign of fear, no sign that his hit had achieved anything. And that unshaken response created a question in the air that he was not ready to face. A question that would grow, second by second, as the truth about her began to surface. Her calm reaction was not an act. It was the natural expression of a life shaped by pressure, discipline, and situations where losing composure meant losing everything. When the collision sent her into the wall, her body went through a sequence she had practiced thousands of times without even thinking about it. She absorbed the impact through muscle memory, redirected her weight, and recentered herself before the noise of the moment had even settled. To anyone watching closely, it looked effortless. To those who were not, it looked like she simply did not care. The truth was deeper. Her calm was not indifference. It was mastery. The people around her waited for something. A wince. A flash of irritation. A sharp inhale. Anything that would show she felt the hit. But she offered nothing. Her face stayed even, her breathing steady. She had been trained to stay functional under conditions where most people would crumble. Years of drills had taught her that emotion could be a distraction, and reaction could be a weakness if you let it control you. She had learned to observe first. Always observe. And in that gym, after that hit, she did exactly that. She watched the man who shoved her. She watched the room around him. She looked not for apology or acknowledgement, but for motive, pattern, intention. Nothing about her was passive. Her calm was strategic. The man who knocked her into the wall felt the weight of her silence before he understood it. His plan had been simple. Make her move. Make her flinch. Establish the hierarchy he believed already existed. But when she stayed composed, he found himself suddenly uncertain. He was used to reactions. He relied on them. They gave him feedback, told him if his push had landed the way he wanted. Her lack of response left him without footing. It made him question whether the hit had been seen as playful, disrespectful, or invisible. The more she stayed calm, the more he felt exposed. Her posture told a different story to anyone who understood body mechanics. She did not tense up. She did not spread her stance to look threatening. She did not lift her hands as if preparing to retaliate. She simply aligned herself. Shoulders loose. Weight balanced. Vision open, but not locked on any one person. It was the kind of readiness that comes from someone who can react faster than most people can think. Her body communicated control without force, presence without display. It was the calm of someone who knows that true power does not need to announce itself. Inside her mind, she ran a quiet assessment of the room. The distance between bodies. The exits. The energy of the group. The size of the man in front of her, and the way he carried himself. She did not do this because she felt threatened. She did it because awareness was her default setting. Even in civilian spaces, even in everyday moments, her training kept her grounded in observation. She understood how quickly situations could escalate when ego got involved. She understood how a careless shove could turn into something far more serious if handled poorly. And she had no intention of letting a simple gym mishap become unnecessary conflict. Her calm also came from perspective. She had stood in environments where the stakes were higher than bruised pride. She had dealt with people far more aggressive and far more dangerous than anyone in that room. Compared to that, this moment was almost small, not irrelevant, but not worth giving emotion to. The wall behind her had been solid, but she had leaned on walls colder than that. The man in front of her had been forceful, but she had faced force that was meant to break her. Everything inside her understood the scale of things. This was a ripple. She was familiar with waves. The others started paying attention without meaning to. They sensed the tension, even if they did not understand why. Calmness like hers has a gravity to it. It draws eyes because it feels out of place in a scene built on noise and bravado. People began watching the space between her and the man. They expected her to speak, maybe say she was fine or brush it off in some casual way. But she stayed quiet. Speaking would have shifted the dynamic in a direction she did not choose. She preferred silence until she had a reason to break it. What made her calm so striking was that it did not challenge anyone. It did not push back. It did not escalate. It simply existed. But in a room full of people who relied on energy and loud confidence, that quiet presence carried more weight than any punch. Her calm reaction revealed something important long before her identity did. It showed she had nothing to prove. It showed she was unshaken. And it showed that whatever they thought they knew about her was only the surface of a much deeper truth. The shift in the room did not happen all at once. It started in the small ways people notice without meaning to. A few glanced over because they had heard the thud against the wall. Someone paused mid-drill. Someone else lowered their gloves. Noise that had filled the space a minute earlier settled into something more controlled, like the air had tightened. No one said a word, but every person near her felt something change. It was not the collision itself that caused it. Gyms see contact all the time. It was the way she handled it. The steadiness. The lack of drama. The complete refusal to play into anyone's expectations. The man who hit her tried to keep his posture loose. He shook out his arms, looked around like he was still in control of the moment, but his eyes kept flicking to her. His confidence had cracked just enough that he could not hide it. He had walked into the interaction expecting a predictable outcome. Instead, he ended up facing someone who did not fit his script. When she stabilized without a hint of fear or irritation, it unsettled him. He could not explain why. He just knew he had misread her in a way he could not undo. Around them, curiosity grew in waves. People tried to act like they were focused on their drills, but their attention kept drifting. A few took half steps closer, pretending to reposition themselves. One or two pretended to fix their wraps just to steal another look. They were trying to piece together what they had just seen. It is not normal for someone to get knocked into a wall and stand up with the posture of someone who had simply shifted their weight. Something about it felt off, but not in a threatening way. More like a puzzle no one knew how to solve. The room's energy shifted from loud confidence to quiet calculation. Those who noticed her response began replaying the moment in their heads. They asked themselves whether the hit had been intentional. They asked themselves why she had not reacted. They began to question the assumptions they had made before the drills even started. And once people start questioning first impressions, the entire social balance of a space changes. Even the instructor felt it. He had been focused on another pair, offering corrections, but he sensed the sudden silence near the wall. When he turned, he saw her standing exactly as she had stood when she arrived. Controlled, balanced, eyes steady. He recognized the posture even if he could not place it. It was the stance of someone who knew how to control a room without raising their voice. He walked toward the group with measured steps, not because he expected trouble, but because he wanted to understand what was unfolding. The man who collided with her tried to speak first, maybe to explain, maybe to justify, but his voice came out thinner than before. She still had not said anything. She still did not seem bothered. That only made things more confusing. People expect either conflict or concession. They expect an argument or a laugh, or at least a break in the tension. She offered none of that. Her calm acted like a spotlight turned back onto the man, revealing more about him than about her. His aggression, once seen as harmless bravado, now looked unnecessary. His attempt to appear dominant now looked sloppy. The shift in the room was making him smaller by the minute. The others noticed her lack of defensiveness. They noticed the way she held her ground without tightening her jaw. They noticed how she looked at the man without a flicker of worry. And they noticed the confidence behind her stillness. Not the loud kind. Not the kind fueled by ego. The kind that comes from someone who knows exactly what they are capable of. That type of confidence changes the temperature of a room faster than shouting ever will. People began recalibrating. The ones who had dismissed her earlier started questioning themselves. The ones who had not paid attention now paid full attention. A few even stepped back, giving her more space without realizing it. Respect is not always loud. Sometimes it shows up in small movements, in the way people adjust their distance, in the way conversations quiet near someone who carries themselves with certainty. The shift was not just about her. It was about them. They saw a moment that challenged their habits. They saw someone who did not react the way they expected. They saw a hit that should have made someone crumble, and instead they saw someone remain grounded. And that forced them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about strength in that room. The man who shoved her did not understand why the room felt different now. He only knew that his earlier confidence had drained away. She stood calm, unafraid, unshaken, and the space around her seemed to respond to that. The room had begun to understand something important, even if they could not yet put it into words. The shift was complete. They were no longer looking at her as someone who did not belong. They were looking at her as someone they had underestimated in a way that felt suddenly, unmistakably wrong. The reveal of her true identity did not come from her. It came from the instructor, the only person in the room who had a reason to know more about her than the rest. He had received a message earlier in the week saying a high-ranking guest might drop in for observation, someone with extensive operational background, someone he was told to treat like any other visitor unless instructed otherwise. He did not expect that guest to be her. He expected someone older, louder, sharper around the edges. not someone who blended into the room with quiet confidence. But as soon as he recognized her posture during the moment of impact, something clicked. He had seen that way of standing before during advanced training sessions, in rare clips shown only to instructors, in briefings about the people who shaped the standards everyone else tried to reach. He approached the group slowly, giving himself a second to confirm what he suspected. She looked at him with calm acknowledgement, not surprise. She knew he had made the connection. He stopped beside her, hands resting on his hips, trying to choose the right words because the room was already tuned into every breath. He did not want to embarrass her. He did not want to escalate the situation. But he knew the environment had shifted, and clarity was necessary before assumptions created something unstable. The man who shoved her noticed the instructor's focus and straightened like someone preparing for feedback. He tried to look unfazed, tried to appear casual, but the uncertainty in his eyes betrayed him. The instructor glanced at him only briefly before turning fully toward her. It was a small gesture, but it told the entire room something important. Respect can be quiet, but it is unmistakable. His tone changed too, not louder, but steadier, more formal. He addressed her by rank first. Not a nickname, not a gym greeting. A rank that did not belong in a casual training room. A rank that froze the air as soon as the first syllable left his mouth. The people nearest to them blinked, unsure if they heard correctly. A few thought it had to be a joke. But the instructor did not smile. He did not soften his voice. He stood with the posture of someone speaking to someone far above him. Someone whispered, asking if they heard right. Someone else stopped wrapping their hands mid-loop. The man who shoved her felt his stomach drop. His face went pale, like he had been hit for the first time that day. He replayed the moment he pushed her, the force he used, the intention behind it, and now it felt like a spotlight had been turned on him. He had gone out of his way to knock into someone who outranked everyone in the building, someone who had spent her life leading the people he idolized from a distance. The room processed the revelation in slow waves. Many of them knew the stories. They had heard about the Admiral who had taken unconventional paths, the one who had reorganized training protocols, the one who had shaped operational strategies that younger recruits studied without knowing she had written them. They knew her reputation for mental toughness, quiet leadership, and precision under pressure. They had built her up in their minds as a legend, almost untouchable, someone who did not exist in regular spaces. And now she stood in front of them, calm, centered, and very real. She gave the instructor a small nod, not dismissing the acknowledgement, but not embracing it either. She had not come to the gym to dominate a room or intimidate anyone. She had come because she liked training in ordinary places. They helped her stay grounded. They reminded her of where strength really came from. The attention made her slightly uncomfortable, not because she was shy, but because she knew reverence often created distance, and she had no interest in being placed on a pedestal. But the room could not go back to how it had been. People saw her differently now. They stood taller, listened more closely, held themselves with more discipline. A few of them admired her instantly. A few felt embarrassed for how they had underestimated her earlier. The man who shoved her looked like he wanted to apologize but could not find the words. Every time he opened his mouth, nothing came out. His earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by something closer to fear, but also respect. He realized he had collided with someone who had been forged under conditions he could not imagine. He realized he had tested the wrong person for the wrong reason. The instructor tried to ease the tension by shifting the group back into training mode, but the atmosphere had changed for good. They moved with more precision now. They watched her not to judge, but to learn. They studied the way she stood, the way she breathed, the way she carried herself. And though she still had not raised her voice or claimed any authority, the room responded to her as if she had. Respect had settled over the group like a quiet acknowledgement shared between everyone present. Respect earned in seconds is not the kind of respect that comes from titles or medals or anything that can be printed on a plaque. It comes from presence. It comes from the way a person holds themselves when someone tries to knock them off balance. It comes from the way they stand back up without a single tremor in their voice or their posture. When the room learned who she was, their shock was immediate, but the respect that followed was not because of her rank. It was because everything they had just witnessed lined up with the kind of person capable of carrying that rank with integrity. The silence that settled after the reveal was not tense. It was thoughtful. A room that had been full of noise only minutes earlier now moved with deliberate care. People became more aware of their own movements, like the energy had shifted from showing off to paying attention. The ones who had laughed at her when she walked in now avoided making eye contact, not out of fear, but out of a sudden understanding that they had misjudged someone whose depth they could not begin to measure. The ones who had ignored her now found themselves watching her with genuine interest. She did nothing to claim their respect. She did not lecture. She did not correct anyone. She did not even acknowledge the change. She simply returned to her stance, ready to continue training as though nothing unusual had happened. That made the respect grow faster. People respect strength, but they respect restraint even more. She had both, and she used neither to elevate herself. She let the moment be what it was without trying to manipulate it. The man who knocked her into the wall felt the weight of the room shift hardest. It was not humiliation that hit him. It was clarity. He realized the story he had built in his head about her had been formed from lazy assumptions. Not because he was cruel, but because he was careless. And standing near someone who embodied a different level of discipline made him face the gap between who he was and who he wanted to be. He wanted to apologize, but an apology felt too small for the context. What he really wanted was to change. That desire showed in the way he adjusted his posture, the way he approached the next drill, the way he focused rather than performed. Others felt something similar. Some admired her calm. Some admired the way she handled pressure. Some admired the quiet authority she carried without ever asking for it. Each person found a different reason to respect her, but all of it formed a collective understanding that had not existed earlier. They began to absorb the lesson she had offered without speaking a word. That real strength is steady, not loud. That capability does not need an audience. That leadership can live in silence as easily as it lives in commands. The instructor moved with more composure too. He did not change how he taught, but he carried himself like someone reminded of why he started training in the first place. He watched her with a mix of admiration and professional curiosity, seeing details in her stance that others might miss. He knew he had the rare chance to observe someone who represented the highest standard in their field, and he treated the moment with quiet respect. She continued training with them, not above them, not separate from them, with them. That choice alone deepened the respect in the room. She partnered with people without hesitation. She adjusted her pace to match theirs. She offered subtle guidance through movement rather than instruction. She made others better without framing it as teaching. When she touched someone's wrist to adjust their angle or shifted her own stance to demonstrate balance, they understood the privilege of learning from someone who rarely showed her skill in civilian spaces. By the end of the session, people moved differently, not because she corrected them, but because her presence set a higher standard. They listened more. They pushed harder. They respected the space in a way they had not when they entered. The room felt more grounded, more intentional, almost like her discipline had seeped into the walls. Respect earned in seconds has a lasting echo. Even after the session ended, even after she gathered her things and prepared to leave as quietly as she arrived, the room remained still. No one wanted to break the silence first. They watched her go with a mix of admiration and reflection. They understood they had witnessed something rare. Not a performance, not a lesson delivered by force. Just a moment where someone's true character revealed itself without needing to be announced. And the respect stayed with them, shaping the way they would walk into every room that followed.